Let's start by painting this anemone. This particular anemone is shown at more of an angle, and you can see that you're seeing the full petals along the back, but hardly any of these front petals. So I'm going to try and mimic this shape as I paint it. I've mixed my phthalo blue with a little bit of opera rose to get this blue shade for the petals. And I don't know if you can see just a hint of pink in the reference photo, but that's why I mixed in just a little bit of opera rose. Now I'm going to start with the petals that are the easiest for me to paint to start to block out the shape of this flower. Moving on to my next petal, and this one started on the same level as the first, but I've painted the outer edge. I've extended it a little bit beyond the first one. This is to create that illusion that it's further away. I also want to keep in mind that I want as few brushstrokes as possible so I don't overwork this anemone. I'll just continue around the flower, and I'm starting to make these petals a little bit smaller. Okay, now it gets a little bit tricky with these front petals. You really want to focus on what you're seeing rather than what you think you see. If you were painting an anemone that was fully front-facing, all of the petals around the center would be equal in size and shape. But since we're painting on an angle, we kind of have to change up every petal ever so slightly. Now I don't want to overwork this at all, so I'm going to let the petals dry while I move on to the stem. Starting at the bottom of my page with this stem and working my way up to the flower. I prefer to pull my strokes away from me when I'm putting down my initial brush strokes for a finer line. I tend to have more control that way, and then I can go back over it if I need to. If you prefer to start at the flower and move your way down, that's totally fine. Do what feels more comfortable to you. The important thing is that I'm really careful not to touch the stem to my flower. I don't know if you can see this, but I've left about 1/8 of an inch between the stem and the flower so that the green wouldn't bleed into my blue petals. These details do not have to touch. Your eye will naturally connect them together when the piece is finished. Next, I'm going over my stems just to make them a little bit darker using the same color I already painted them with. Now that my anemone is dry, I can go back over it and add the center details. I'm using Payne's Gray, and I've painted an oval with my size 8 round brush. I've also dotted in these little dots that are touching the oval so that my center isn't a perfect oval. And next, using my size 0 round brush, I'm painting dots around the outside of that. And notice that the dots on the top half of the flower are a little bit further away from the center than the dots on the bottom. This is to help with that illusion of the flower being at an angle.